All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. My name is Mark Farmer. I'm the Senior Digital Communications Advisor at Metrolinx. And today we are going to talk about digital project management. Now, before I begin, I have 40 slides. There's no way I'm getting through that in 20 minutes unless I speak even faster than I used to, and I speak quickly. So if anybody would like, after the presentation, I'll put my coordinates up online, contact me. Happy to send you the full notes. Show of hands, just quickly. Is anyone here a project manager? Got a couple. Okay, any developers? Designers? One, nice. UX? Oh, sort of a half there in the back. And I guess everyone else is other. I just wanted to ask, because I wanted to tailor the talk a little bit. I'm going to see how much I can get into each of these four things. Now, the reason why is because I think there's some gotchas, some tips that you can take away, even if you're not a project manager. Because if there's one thing that we do, it's projects. And it's very rare nowadays to do a website from scratch, so it's usually a migration, which is a particular kind of project. So hopefully they're going to give you some things that you can take away and activate in your work. So at Metrolinx.com, most recently, we merged 3 websites into one, a main, a news, and a blog, and reduced content by about 60% across English and French, not bad. Moved to a new CMS and digital asset management system in the process. And we got recognized for the success with an award from Content Stack, our CMS vendor. And we used Cloudinary for our digital asset management system. One of the main differentiators for Content Stack was that it's headless and composable. And I won't get into too much detail about what that means. There's varying degrees of fluency and literacy about these terms. But ask me afterwards if you want. This is the question I bet everyone's asking right now. Yes, I do know I'm at a Drupal conference. But as a matter of fact, I moved the Royal Ontario Museum to Drupal 12 years ago. We're still on the platform. Some of you may have heard from Perry Shepard and company earlier today. And the ROM is where I cut my teeth in project management. But what I'm going to speak to isn't specific to that migration or any migration. What I'm going to speak to, first of all, is lesson number 1. People first, then technology in every project you do. What makes a successful digital project, surprisingly, isn't technology. You can make a less than optimal choice of technology and still have a successful project. Now, that's not to say it's impossible for technology to derail it, but just that there are even more important considerations. So remember, an indivisible choice of technology was ultimately someone's decision, a person's decision. That's one reason why I will always emphasize people over technology. It's also a matter of choice. Clients can spend an inordinate amount of time trying to nail down the perfect tech stack, which probably doesn't exist. But part of this comes from that mistaken expectation that they need a tech solution which is infinitely flexible. Has anyone heard that when they've talked to a client? We don't know what we need it to do, so it needs to do everything. Well, that's a unicorn. That's not a piece of technology. And part of this comes down to the locking effect. The idea that once you implement a technology, you are locked in for 5, 10, 12, 15 years, which is not the case. So you can always migrate again. Hopefully it's not right after, but a migration, a choice of technology is not a suicide pact. It's a choice, and you can make different choices. So one other thing about a successful digital project is that even if the technology becomes an issue, like I said, ask yourself how you got there. Somebody somewhere thought it was a good idea. That somebody was a person. And that's where the issue started, not with the technology. And this paradoxically is what that means. So this is why I say, and this was something I learned from a boss early on, the need to bring people along for the ride. So I want to take a page from the Agile Manifesto and paraphrase it with people over processes and tools, collaboration over negotiation. That's my interpretation of the Agile Manifesto. From my personal manifesto, people over platform. If you have the right people empowered with the right information to make the right decisions, you will land on the right technology. But first, you need to get everyone in the car along for the ride. How do you do that? Some simple things, like make the project case clearly. Make sure people feel they've been heard. That's super important. Not just for senior resources, but for rank and file, the teams. Make sure they feel they're an active part of the process, not a passive recipient. This goes to agency. It's one of the traits of a high-functioning team is they have agency. It applies to people as well. And give people a stake in the outcome. Answer the question, what's in it for me? Engage them. Content stack was a sea change for our users. Composable and headless is a fundamental shift. I mean, the best way that was exemplified was that in the old days, you do a preview. What you see is what you get. That isn't necessarily the case with something like Content Stack that's fully composable. So they had to learn a new way of thinking, not just a new interface, but a new way of thinking about how they put up content. And if we hadn't brought them along for the ride in that part of the process, there probably would have been a rebellion. So, lesson number 2. Migrations are messy. Migrations don't have to be messy. Be the partner your stakeholders need. And this is leadership. Leadership starts with trust. Trust means consistently demonstrating that you make good on promises, and you're going to be with them every step of the way. That's essential. Another part of this is to show them a plan. You can't lead if you don't know where you're going. And one of the best ways to do this is to have a plan and demonstrate the plan regularly. This gives people the reassurance that you thought about it and you know what you're doing. So if you have no direction, you can't lead. Remember that. The secret of our success with the Metrolinks was that it was tremendously difficult because there was no automation. We made a fundamental decision. We were going to review every single piece of content along the way. So this was not lift and shift. This was a full edit and consolidation. And it had to be translated in English and French. So think about this for a second. How would that have ended if we had prioritized technology or processes over people? If we had gone to them and said, by the way, we need you to evaluate, edit, and translate every single web page, maybe combine them, again, probably wouldn't have landed well. So that's why putting those relationships in place first was essential, taking them along for the ride. Another thing that's important, this is straight out of the PMP, Project Management Institute, is information radiators. And no, this is not the radiator you're looking for. One of our key information radiators was Airtable. And an information radiator, according to Project Management Institute methodology, is just a way to see what you're doing. Charts and graphs, things like that. So for ours, with Airtable, we were able to track down to minute detail. And this is just one example. If you can imagine this as a long row of one single piece of content. Title, comments, where it's going, what the URL will be, what the previous URL would be. We put in this thing called Slido content integration at yes, no. Do we need support loading it into the website? Yes, no. So if you're a user looking at this, there's two things that might happen. One is you're overwhelmed, but the other thing that's good is you can see that we've got it under control. We know where everything is going. Nothing's been missed. We've thought about it. So if you're able to walk people through this and show them how this works for them so they don't get overwhelmed, then they have the confidence that you know what you're doing and they're going to be willing to be led. That's just one example. Basically allowing you to keep things on track. There's lots of other ways you can do this. A simple spreadsheet, Excel, Google Sheets, anything like Zoho. There's many, many, many ways to do it. And there's also enterprise options for this too. The low-fi one is with a spreadsheet. One other thing you want to do is show progress. People want to see that the project is moving forward. Progress gives them, again, the confidence that you know what you're doing and you're achieving results. So for example, in the stand-ups, we had the ability to show them by team, which I've redacted here, what the status is. And what you can see in these, although it's kind of blurry, is that we have the number of pages to go, the number of pages done, the number of pages ready for review. And what they saw over time was that those columns were reaching the optimal state, which takes us to the next radiator, a burn-down chart. Project Management 101, but again, this shows people that you're reaching your target. Quick show of hands, does anyone here, actually first of all, before you saw this, how many people knew what a burn-down chart was? Okay, so this is a way to show a couple of things. The green line is where you need to be, what progress you need to achieve to hit day one. And the blue line is what you actually achieve. So if that blue line starts diverging massively from the green line, you've got a problem. But if you're more or less close, you're in the right ballpark. And again, once you explain that to users, they can see, okay, we're going to deliver for day 0, day 1. We're in good shape. Yeah?
Does green line include scope creep?
If you had scope added to this, you would see that green line shift. So, for example, it might go down like this, and then make a little bit of a hop, and then continue going down.
So it's not always straight down?
Not in an Agile project. Agile embraces change at every step of the process, but there's specific ways that you incorporate change, such as grooming a backlog, things like this. And actually, here's another question. How many people are familiar in some way, shape, or form with the Agile process? Almost? Okay, so a good number. It embraces change. A backlog is the total sum of things you want to do. And that should reflect ongoing change. Because in Agile, you're learning as you go, and that's a good thing, not a bad thing. But that was a great question. Lesson number 3, as I plow through this at a heroic rate. Architecture is not enough, which would be either a slide title or the worst James Bond sequel ever. Thank you. Question for you, for the room. When you're planning your architecture for your site, who's responsible? Let's see a show of hands. Information architect. Nobody. 1 half. Brave man. Project manager? Product owner. The team? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Other. Something I didn't mention. Okay. Project Management Institute says team. That's not to say the architect doesn't have a key role, because they're part of the team. But when you empower a team to make good decisions, they are able to make, surprise, good decisions. For me, I'm going to diverge massively and go against all my training and say users. Because the team is the conduit for user feedback. So for example, if you're thinking about your architecture, there's many ways you can capture user input. One is using a simple thing like card sorting. Has anyone ever used this before? Yeah, a number. Okay, good. For those of you who haven't, it's really simple. It's taking a card that represents either a page or a piece of information on your website and putting it in front of someone. So obviously it can't be every single piece of content, but it's relevant ones, top level ones. Then you say to your users, okay, how do you think about this content? Put it into groups that are logical for you. And they'll say, well, these belong in an About Us, these belong in Apply, these belong in Did You Knows? And that's the moment where you realize that you didn't know as much as you thought you knew about your site and your users. Once you have that, then the architect who's been working on this all along can take a more active role in turning that into an actual site structure. But this is one reason why you want to capture user feedback sooner, earlier, because it's a lot harder to make changes further down the road once you've got that feedback. There's different ways you can plan this out. Lo-fi are things like Visio, Miro. Again, there are enterprise solutions, but you don't need to go full enterprise. Lesson number 4. AI will change many things. There are some things AI will not change. I've read that project management is going to be displaced and made irrelevant by AI, and I think there's some assumption behind that for people that don't have a lot of exposure to project management, which is that it's a Gantt chart, that it's a schedule. And if that were the case, project management would be on its last legs right now, believe me. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that project management is not scheduling. It's about a lot of different skills that are relatively difficult for AI to handle right now. In the future, give me another call, but for now, not so much. What AI can start and will start doing for your project right now are a few things, like scheduling, what we call work back structure, directories, basically what do I need to do when. It can also help you with writing a business case, project charter, stuff like that. Interestingly, it's also starting to be able to operate on Microsoft project files. Now, when I asked ChatGPT, can you ingest and operate on MS project files, it said yes. When I asked Microsoft Copilot, it said no. I thought, are they fully aware that their own software won't work with them? Okay. Awkward question number 55. What AI won't do is negotiate with stakeholders. The human element it can't replace yet, if ever. Understanding what's really behind the lack of buy-in or cooperation. There's no way you can do that now. Leading people. And so that's why I won't replace it, at least in the short term. The now term in terms of AI looks like this, at least from a project point of view, is the ability to create Gantt charts, modify schedules, like I said, create scope statements, assist with developing plans. When we look in the near term, we're seeing a shift more towards agentic AI. Has anyone come across that? How many people have an idea what agentic AI means or have been exposed to it? Any hands? One or two or three? It's basically the idea that we're moving from a generative model where you use traditional ChatGPT interface, you enter something, it spits out something. An agent has some autonomy. It's able to go and do a task. For example, interact with a website, go do some research for you, that sort of thing. So these agents are, I hate to use a cliche, but I'll call it AI 2.0 for now. And that's where I think we're headed. In the future is when things get really interesting, and that's when we start to look at autonomous expert systems. So that could be something as fundamental as being able to interview stakeholders. Right now, AI can understand chat with you, verbal or otherwise, and that's being used in customer service. It's still fairly on the dumb side. But as it builds out and it gets more context and it can understand conversation better, it will actually be able to start interviewing people, collecting requirements, analyzing them, putting them into a plan. From that point, it's really a hop, skip, and a jump to doing something really quite dramatic, like leading a meeting. So we know that that ability to understand conversation, to plan, and to reason is on the horizon in AI. It's happening right now, and we're seeing it with AI, where some of the tasks are being moved to the inference engine, away from the learning engine. So, what does this mean for you as a developer, a designer, even if there was a UX person here? You won't be working with robo PMs anytime soon. Not yet. In the short term, however, people that haven't worn a PM hat traditionally, developers, designers, UX, you name it, will be able to do more of the things a traditional PM has done. Now, not everyone will do it well. Just because you can get ChatGPT to come up with a good project plan doesn't mean you should. You also need to know what goes into project management before you start that. But as AI progresses, and especially as it becomes more autonomous, things will change. And that's when you will be increasingly working with agents. Smart organizations will recognize that this still needs to be, and does anyone know what this acronym stands for? Shout it out if you do.
Human in the loop.
Bingo. A human in the loop. That's necessary for the foreseeable future. In 10 years, give me another call. Having said that, not all organizations are smart, so they may not recognize that. And I see that because I am such a fast talker, I dramatically underestimate how long it takes to get through 40 slides. That's it for me.
We have time for questions then.
Yeah, these are my coordinates. Contact me if you'd like some of the notes. And that's my website where I blog. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, by all means. We got one there.
This might be a short answer, or this might be a very long one, but I'd be curious to know, at the very beginning of the process of redoing Metrolinx, how did you and your team reach the decision to go composable and headless?
Yeah, it was interesting because this, broadly speaking, enables a lot of, and again, for people that don't know, I think I said earlier I wasn't going to explain it, I will really briefly. Composability is the ability to take many streams, I'll dramatically oversimplify this, many streams of information from, say, like multiple instances of Drupal, and maybe like another CMS over here and another data source here, and combine them, put them together to display. And headlessness is basically the idea that you don't style it within the database. So you add style and presentation layers through an application programming interface so that if you want to output it to a traditional website, you do it this way. If you wanted to put it on a digital sign, you would do it another way. So those two things put together offer a tremendous amount of power and functionality and flexibility and future-proofing. So we know that right now, for example, on Metrolinx, our use case is fairly simple. But looking down the road, we can see that as things evolve, there's a strong chance that we'll need to incorporate some of that composability, headlessness. It's already happening on the Go website side, partly because they have an even stronger case for it, because of things like digital signage. But we know that that's something that we wanted to bake in. So that was the reason why, I think, more than anything else. Just not speaking on behalf of Metrolinx officially, but my own take. Oh, we got one more.
Hello.
Right.
I have a question that's probably completely unrelated to your talk. Are you using the Drupal signage framework?
Are we using the Drupal signage framework?
Awesome.
Oh,
How
are
about
we?
that? Yeah.
Oh, the question is, I don't think we are now. I mean, certainly not on the Metrolinx side, but actually I'm curious if they do on the Go side. Let me find out.
All right, thanks.
Yeah,
Sorry for the random question.
that's okay. Note to self, Drupal framework signage. All right. If that's it, you've got 9 minutes back. Thank you very much.